Hi, I'm Matt Barry. This is Low Budget Visions, where we celebrate personal DIY and independent filmmaking. And I'm joined today by Noah Cohen, a filmmaker who I met in Philadelphia last fall at the Philavision Festival. And I think, no, I noticed you were at that festival, you were wearing the Jacques Tati t-shirt, which I'm a
Yes,
big Jacques Tati fan. That caught my
definitely.
attention. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. So it was always
Oh,
nice
that's
to meet
cool.
a fellow Jacques Tati fan. But anyway, welcome to
Yes, no, I could
Low
talk
Budget
about Jack
Visions.
Bro. Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you for coming on today to talk, about your films. And I'll mention at Philavision that the film that you showed, Midnight Flowers, I really enjoyed seeing that. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that film, your filmmaking, your background in filmmaking, and anything else that you want to share with us today. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. The um, I'm trying to think where I should get started with this, but
Well,
the
how about
I
let me ask you this? How about I mean, where did you begin filmmaking? What brought you to filmmaking? Do you remember?
right,
Yeah,
right.
kind of what led you to first making your first film?
Yeah, it's funny, my kind of origin story of how I ended up to it, but it was like I've always had a like passion for shooting stuff and like camera, doing things with the camera since I was like very, very little. Um, but I got led to it. Well, it's funny because I feel like this is like my like dark hidden origin of like the movie that got me to where I am after a bunch of chain of events. But this is funny. But when I was like 6 or 7, I I loved like the Michael Bay Transformers and like all these like toy like action movies and things like that. Because like and I was with some friends at summer camp, and everyone and all like the kids around my age were really into like Transformers that summer that it came out. And then we went like, wait a minute, we have our own Transformers toys. Why don't we make our own Transformers movie? And then it like turned into so like my first like film, if you could call it, was just like we went on one of those wooden railroad like train tables, and we set up like little wooden block buildings and like Transformers toys, and it was like just us like holding up the figures in front of the camera, and we tried to like recreate the Michael Bay movie from memory like just and that's kind of like my earliest movie that exists, and I was like 7 or something, seven
That's
or
cool.
8.
That's how I made some of my first movies that way with little, action figurines and stuff, little action figures. And, it kind of lets you work on like an epic scale when all you have is a video camera and maybe a few people to help out. It's a fun way to get started. And especially if you're able to recreate some moments from your favorite movies. So it sounds like you were kind of a Michael Bay fan, kind of the Hollywood action movies. Is that fair to say?
Like, well, it's funny because I always joke about like as a kid I like, I thought that movie was awesome. But these days, it's like a lot of stuff like I feel like I would hate it if I watched it now, which is funny. But so it's like I have a weird debt to it because it introduced me to making movies myself. Uh, it, and but it's funny because now it's like, I mean, I think there's still it's not like like a Michael Bay Transformers movie has no merit, and I know people like lots of people are genuine fans of those, and they're very popular. But it's like I haven't gone back and watched that like original 2007 movie for probably at least a decade, and like I wonder how it would hold up for me now because it's like the kind of how loud it is and like the sense of humor might like not work with me today, but it's just funny because I always have like that connection to it, I guess. I don't know.
No, that's true. Sometimes like there's movies that influence us very early on. We may not end up doing anything like it in our own work in the future, but it's a good gateway into thinking about movies, thinking about how they're put together, getting us excited about going out and making our own films. I'm curious. So going off of that, after you started, as you were continuing to make films, you said that you think you may not necessarily enjoy the Transformers as much if you went back and looked at it today. What were some other films that you've started watching that I guess changed the way you thought about cinema or about filmmaking?
I'm trying to think. Like I guess like so for a while it was like after I was really little, I kind of slowly found my way to filmmaking from what was just like a little hobby type thing. And it's like from doing stuff like those little toy movies, I then like looked on YouTube and found like other little toy movies that, kind of probably kids just a little bit older than me were making. And it led me to stuff like stop motion, which I have like a huge passion for. And aside from some of my like live action stuff, I've also done kind of some stop motion and animation things. The um but I found like stop motion, and then also something that like really inspired me as a kid was I guess maybe from like looking up how to make my own stuff, I found uh like DIY filmmaking YouTube channels and things like that. The one of my like really inspiring ones to me. This is funny because this is more YouTube than a film that inspired me, but the this one YouTube channel, Backyard FX, that was like around when I was maybe I watched it when I was like 10 or so, and it was like this uh YouTube show that like back in maybe 2010 or so, like YouTube wasn't like, the big production that it is like today. And it was just kind of like uh but like the most high budget TV show feeling that a YouTube show could have. But it was like the show was each episode they would try to recreate a Hollywood movie effect on like a cheap indie budget. And like I remember like the first one I saw was like they tried to recreate the face melts from the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark with like DIY things, and they took like a plastic skull and they put red wax on it and melted it with a hair dryer and then they fast forwarded it to like recreate the shot. And that was like so inspiring to me that like they found their own no budget way to like do these big silly or like genre movie effects. And I was inspired by that a lot, and then that led to me doing a lot of like trying to learn how to do like makeup effects and like DIY like costumes or things like that, and it kind of led me, and learning about monster effects and animation kind of led me to like horror movies, and I have lots of uh love for like Evil Dead and like lots of kind of silly anything like as a kid around that age, like anything with like monsters or practical effects was like always like I love Jim Henson stuff too,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
Dark Crystal and like Labyrinth were like big for me. I don't know. I feel like I'm going
No,
all
that's
over.
it's great to hear how this all kind of came together for you. I mean, and it's also interesting to hear about how you were using YouTube as a sort of a DIY filmmaking uh, a learning tool basically because yeah, that's something I didn't have years ago when I started making movies. It was kind of hard to find a lot of that DIY information out there. There were books that had, professional production information, but that was like way beyond what I was able to do with, the kind of equipment that I had. So I think for me, it was a lot of it was just from watching movies and trying to figure out how things were done. But it sounds like for you, you were able to see YouTube videos that kind of broke it down and really gave you something practical that you could work from. So that sounds like a great way
Yeah.
to get started.
The it is funny that I almost think I got interested in film as an art through like kind of some of these how to make your own movie first, and then that sort of led me to discovering movies myself because I feel like there were definitely like movies that really inspired me that I loved when I was young, but I feel like it wasn't until I was older, like maybe like in middle school, that I really like fell in love with like film and the art of film aside from the kind of creative outlet that I had it as, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting how you know we reach a point. I think a lot of filmmakers say this. They reach a point where they start to think more seriously about movies. That they're looking at how it was put together. They think about the impact it has on you as you're watching it as a viewer. So it sounds like what you're saying is that your interest in making films kind of it was almost like working backwards. It kind of led you to, you had this interest in making films, and then you started to seek out films that you could draw inspiration from, and that kind of led you to explore more of, like film history, basically. Is that right?
Yeah,
Cool.
I discovered so many films through like YouTube and online. Like I wonder like how I would have gotten to it without that. Like, I couldn't imagine being in like the it's just like what led me to it and how I discovered lots of, films and things. And like I wonder how it would have like worked out differently if I like didn't have access to that, I guess.
Yeah, it's
I
so
don't know.
important to have access to things, and that's why it's great that there's so much available now, just through so many different channels. Because, yeah, I mean, I can remember there was lots of films that it felt like it took me years to be able to find a copy of, and these are films that are easy to find now, but even even 20, 30 years ago, it was like it felt like they were almost impossible to see. Um, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about some of these films that you discovered at that time. And again, this was like in middle school, I think you said. What were
Yeah,
some of the films
yeah.
that you discovered at that time that, particularly inspired you or kind of opened your ways of thinking about what a movie could be?
Right. I'm trying to think of like films when I was younger, because I almost think like most of the films that I think about now are like films I didn't see till I was like 13, maybe. I'm trying to
Yeah,
because
really any of them,
like
I
a
bet.
lot of times when I watch like interviews from directors, they talk about like seeing some amazing film when they were, a little kid and that like stuck with them forever. I feel like I mean I grew up with a lot of like the my my parents like have interesting taste in movies and like they kind of led me to some things. Like I'm trying to think of like the movies I had. Like we had like a big binder of DVDs that I would watch a lot. Like we had a little portable DVD player that would be in the back seat of the car, and I would like watch the same 10 movies over and over again. Like I loved like Gremlins as a kid, like Indiana Jones, like some of the Spielberg kind of era stuff.
Oh yeah, those were some of my favorite.
Yeah, and like some of them I still love. Like I'm a big I love Temple of Doom, even though a lot of people have like a distaste for that one. The um the I'm trying to think. I feel like I should have like a better example because I was thinking about this before we talked. Like I was like I don't even know like what to say for my like early influences. The
Well, if there were any, we could, even get around to talking about some more recent influences, films that you've seen. I mean, but maybe what I could do is, at this point, if you could talk maybe a little bit about some of the films that you were making at that time in your life. You mentioned getting interested in stop motion, for example. Do you have any
yeah.
films from your own filmography that you look back on and think, this was really showed me like a way I want to do things, as I get older? Were there ones that you look back on that you feel like were really important films for you personally to have made?
The I think like for a while throughout like kind of from when I was like 10 to like high school, the I always wanted to like it grew from a hobby to like slowly being like the main creative thing that I did all the time. And it sort of I always um like it became like silly where then like a lot of the stuff that I got, I would always, as a kid, like think about like how can I make this for the next movie, and then it became a thing like every birthday gift I got, or like, every time I would go, like if I'd be on a trip with my parents, I'd be like, oh, I got to bring my camera because I got to, shoot a movie there while I'm like, I became very focused on like, I wanted to, um, the kind of do get to that like next step, I guess, and like do some like bigger production. But when I was young, a lot of the like little toy movies I did were like just me, and I never really would finish. Like it was very rare that I would like actually edit together um one of my little like video projects. Like I probably have hundreds of things that weren't finished or like just little fragments of things. The only time that I really like now when I go the only like kind of surviving ones I have now are because my dad like would help me edit them together. And my dad was he went to school for like radio and television in the 80s, and then he was a producer and editor for Comcast, and like and he did like some sports radio and stuff like that, which is probably part of the reason that like led me to like doing like a career doing film stuff, is because like he did something like that when I was young. But he would like help me edit together movies, and it slowly, uh, like I guess for a long time it was like just kind of quick little like skits with friends, or things with toys. And it wasn't until maybe middle school that like I think there was this I guess I must have been maybe 14 or 15 when I finally like uh started to learn editing myself and put together my own short. And I remember there was this short film short film that was the a project that I did with one of my close friends, and it was just like a quick horror short that came from there was an old mall by my house that was closing down. And so all the storefronts were closed, and it was kind of in disrepair. Like the carpets were peeling up, and like water was dripping from the ceiling. It was like, like a scary apocalyptic looking building. And that like really inspired me to be like, oh my God, before this closes, I need to do a movie here, like while this locate, like while I have access to this location. So then uh it was very rare that I actually got like another actor or a camera person, and like lots of my early movies were just like me setting up the camera and then standing in front of it to be, every actor. And it was rare that I was able to like wrangle friends in for it, but this was like probably the first time that it was like the crew was just me, my friend, and my dad, and we went to this mall, and there was no real script, and it just is like me wandering around this empty mall, and then I start to hear like the noise of some monster like chasing me, and then I run into like I run and hide in like a corner of the mall, and then like I get scared, like I get jump scared by something, and then it ends, and that's it. But like at the time it was a big step up because it's like, wow, I had my friend act in it, some I wasn't the only person shooting it. And that was like uh, a big step up, I guess.
Well, it sounds like a
But
fun movie from what you're saying. Like you found this location that sounds like the location is what inspired everything else that followed. It sounds like it sounds like a
yeah.
great location to use, like something out of Dawn of the Dead.
Yes. No, and
Yeah.
I didn't even had I only had heard of Dawn of the Dead at that point. Like I don't think I saw it yet. Even though now I love that one. That's like definitely up there. It's like that's probably in some top whatever movies for me.
Oh yeah. Now I'm
But
curious, when you were editing this, I mean, were you doing things like bringing in sound effects or any other kind of like post-production effects? Was this like the first time you were starting to work with those elements and putting a film together, or did that come later?
yeah, it was like it kind of felt like the first time that I put a lot of the things I was learning from online, like it took a lot of the lessons that I just had thought about but never had put into action before. Like it kind of felt like one of the first times where I was like, you know, I'm gonna try to uh actually have multiple scenes that connect in a narrative way, and the uh it was definitely like a bit of a step up, even though at the time I think I always thought like I had big ideas of like big scripts or that I would never actually make, and a lot of things would just be like stuck as ideas, but that was like an actual movie that came together, and I had my dad help me write like a little because like my dad plays guitar and is really into music, and he helped me do like a little riff, like a little like synth riff that was like the score that just got like was repeated over and over again. The the but it was definitely kind of like the first time that I got to like form a short that I felt like I was like proud of as a movie that wasn't just like a little exercise or something.
Yeah, yeah, no, like it sounds like it really stands on its own. It really brought a lot of different elements together. And you said you were 14 when you made that?
Yeah, it had to be something like that. I'm trying to think when that must have been. Yeah, maybe 14, maybe 15 when I did that. The and then sorry, what were you gonna say?
I
I
was
was
going to
going
ask
through
if
it and going.
what did that at that point were you already starting to think about like film school as a possible, path in the coming years? Was that where you would you say you were at a point yet where that was kind of on the horizon as you were thinking more about making films?
Yeah, it was like the around when I was like 15. I think that's when like because I did up through middle school, it was just kind of like the thing I was always interested in doing. But then by the end, going into high school, when I finally kind of made some real like short projects uh that like it, and it was something that like I'm like I really love doing this, and I really loved like uh being able to like entertain people, or like I think the it was like just like the craft of it I got really excited about. And like there were a couple opportunities in middle school, high school, where like whenever there was a option to do a video for a class assignment, I always went like really above and beyond for those, and I would like make them these whole productions. Like I remember in seventh grade, it was like we were learning about like in history, we were learning about the Black Plague, and then I did a whole Lego stop motion that had like a little plague doctors and like the little Lego minifigures getting sick, and it was just like a little historical project, but I did a whole and then I started to really love people start at school started to like know me as like the one movie kid because I always did. I started to do lots of like video projects for school and stuff like that. And I kind of was like, this is what I want to do. And I like sort of started to put all my like focus at school and stuff around that, I guess.
That's great you had the opportunity to show the films and get that feedback from your audience. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. And also, especially, it sounds like it was a very positive reaction. Did you find that that encouraged you to do more, to pursue this more? Did you feel that that feedback was a big part of, encouraging you to pursue this?
Yeah, it's like the feeling of like getting an audience to like laugh from a joke in a movie is like such a like I always it's like a butterflies in your stomach kind of feeling that I feel like maybe I'm still attached to, and I still get now when I get like the opportunity to screen something for people like the like it it was cool to actually get the opportunity to get feedback, like you're saying, get like a reaction out of people is something I really, really love. Maybe that's why uh like I feel like I always lean towards humorous or like comedic things, or horror too, like the kind of things that make people that get like a reaction out of people in an audience is like something that I really love, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of connections between comedy and thrillers because it really involves, kind of provoking the audience. There's, I think there's some building of some tension or suspense, even in comedy, even if the payoff is for a laugh. There is still you have to build up to that joke, or in a thriller, you have to build up that suspense and then pays off in some other way. So yeah, it's interesting that there is a lot of connection between those two genres, and it sounds like you're kind of drawn to both for that
Yeah,
reason. Yeah.
yeah.
So that yeah.
I always say that I feel like humor and horror like are more connected, like in the same way of like building up anticipation for something and then having some kind of like release. Like I don't know. I always feel like or like that humor has some kind of element in drama all the time, or like maybe that's just how I look at it. I'm sure like, other like I'm sure there's probably lots of artists out there that don't think of their things as comedic, but I guess that's just always kind of how I frame it in my head. I don't know.
Yeah, it means an element of humor that can often come in unexpected ways, I think. I'm curious, as you were going through, your final years of high school, did you continue, I know you said you were making films as like class projects, as like assignments and things. Did you continue working on projects on your own, similar to like the film that you shot in the mall? Did you find yourself looking at other locations that might inspire ideas, or writing little scripts that you could film on your own time?
Yeah, it was like the I did my best to kind of try to make my own stuff when I could, but sometimes I felt it like hard. I feel like growing up, I always had trouble kind of pushing myself to make it happen instead of getting it all like stuck in my head. And it was something I like feel like I struggled with a lot and still do now sometimes of like kind of the push to make yourself actually like get up and do it instead of just thinking about it. I feel like I always get caught in my head about ideas and don't like the the it's easy for me to get kind of caught in my head a lot. And I feel like a lot of times in high school, I would be very critical of myself for not being like more productive with my like short work. Like I was always like really hard on myself about it. Uh, and and kind of learning how to, that like of course while making films and making art is fun and it's like what I love to do and what I always want to do, but it is work and it's hard and it was like, the I feel like it took like uh like I really had to like kind of work on my own uh the I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. Maybe like just kind of like focusing my energy and like my like drive to do it uh, still like is like something that I feel like I struggle with sometimes, even though now I'm always busy with things. I don't
Sure.
know why my brain went to that. So, um, but throughout high school, I did try to do, I kind of after ones like that with the mall, I finally got to kind of do, try to actually make like little short films. And I got more used to like uh working with friends and like kind of getting used to directing them, like, and having other people in my projects and having things like a little bit bigger of a scope. And I was able to also I was like lucky that there was like TV production classes in high school, which I didn't start until maybe the sophomore year, maybe the like beginning of sophomore year of high school. But then like once I started doing it, like I got just like so attached to doing like the film and it was almost more like just kind of like a basic communications, like using a camcorder, doing like little assignments. But it was like I took any opportunity. Then for the rest of school, I was doing like independent studies in that like TV production room. I was doing like I got very focused on doing anything I could with like film things, and I I was like lucky enough when I was like maybe 16, I the through my TV production class at my high school, I learned about uh, the Greenfield Youth Film Festival, which was like in the Philly general like Philly area. It was like a high school filmmaker like short film festival that happened like once a school year. And then that kind of And then like the idea of like the opportunity to screen, and it was like, they did it at a whole auditorium, and then kids from, five different high schools all came together to see them. And that was like, it gave me like a goal to like, oh, I gotta get a short together so I could play it at the festival. And it was and I loved doing that, even though like I don't think I ever ended up like winning or getting into the festival really. I think it was just like something I like looked forward to and like inspired me all the years of high school, I guess.
Yeah, no, it
But
sounds like a nice goal to, have to, work toward making a film, to show at it or at least to submit to it. As you were going into, coming out of high school and getting ready to, I guess, to go off to film school, in college, did you find that, I mean, when you got to film school, did you find that it introduced you to a lot of, new ideas about making films that you hadn't considered before, or did you find that, like your work, and that you had done on your own and what you were learning from YouTube, did you see it as, very much a continuation of that?
hmm, the yeah, like I guess the throughout high school, I think I really started to like educate myself about film and like more the craft of it. And I'm trying to think like by the like yeah, like by the middle of high school, I was like keeping up with like art house movies coming out, and I'm trying to think like kind of how I got into more like the films that like would inspire me today, or like kind of in college, the like films I really loved. It was like but it was interesting kind of making the shift from casual movies into like liking more avant-garde or art house things, like the kind of the path that I went, like going like maybe when I was 15, I saw like Pulp Fiction or something, like one of the, which is I know like the basic like film student movie, I guess. But then going from like, you know, Tarantino to being like, oh, he was inspired by Scorsese, and then I'd go and watch Goodfellas and Taxi Driver and things, and then that went to like, oh, Scorsese's inspired by whatever other classic Hollywood films, and that the I guess like it turned into a thing of uh like watching some film that I'd heard of, and then I got like attached to a few different directors, and I would kind of see what their influences are. And like I really fell in love with like Scorsese and the Cohen brothers. Were like very inspiring to me. Uh, the I'm trying to think of like some of the other filmmakers that kind of like led me on the path. I feel like I'm not even like getting at the
Well,
question.
those are certainly great
Um,
ones. I mean, I think they've inspired, at least a couple of generations now. And I think it's interesting what you're saying too about how you were looking, looking at directors that current directors that you enjoyed, seeing what their influences were, and then watching those filmmakers and seeing what their influences were, and how it all just kind of leads back to the beginning of cinema. It's all related, it's all connected. I think that's interesting. I'm curious, when you were in film school, did you take, classes that, I mean, I assume like you were getting access to maybe more equipment that they had in the school. Were you doing like any kind of advanced production classes where you were able to film ideas or, take on productions that were, um, a lot, bigger productions than what you had been able to do on your own? Was that a big, experience that you had there?
well, I think the most amazing thing about film school, more than any technique that I learned or like learning about any film in particular, was more like meeting the community of other filmmakers and artists that are really interested in making some of the same kind of work that I want, that I always wanted to do. And it was like it was a great feeling to finally, because it's like back in high school, there were other kids in the TV production class and other people that were interested in doing it, but I feel like it wasn't until film school that I feel like I met some of the people that had the same like passion and like obsession with movies that I have, and the being able to like I've met lots of people through film school that I still work with now, and and I'm very like grateful for some of the like community of I always like go to that when I like think about the change that happened at film school, I guess was
That's great to hear. I mean, the community is so important. Having people you can, share ideas with, even if you're not necessarily working together on the same project, but at least just be able to, bounce ideas off each other, draw inspiration from, what you see, other people in that community doing with their own films. I mean, that's great to hear. I definitely think that's one of the most important things film school can provide is, the community, and yes, also like the professional network and everything, but I think especially just in terms of sharing ideas. So that's great to hear that you had that there. How many did you have like specific like class projects? Like I don't know how the classes were broken up in your program, but did you have like a first year project, second year project, like a senior project? How did that work out?
the it was great. The I guess like in a similar way that I talked about like the high school film festivals that I did in high school, that like having the structure of the classes to like push myself to keep making new shorts and trying new things was great. The uh in freshman year, like the first semester, you're supposed to make like a 10-minute short film at the end of your first semester. And then there was like a big festival day where we watched through like a bunch of different kids' short projects. And it's like, I'm sure to any other film student, like if anyone looked back at their it was, the class at the time was media arts one. If anyone looked at their media arts one movies now, it would just like hurt to look at them because they're all like so rough and like a lot of the people were making a film for the first time, and like but like looking back at my like movie I made first semester, I'm like, wow, that was a big like level up for me comparing it to the my high school movies, because the anything I made in high school that was like a narrative short film was like just a dumb sketch with friends, or like it was rare that it was anything more than that. uh but then when I got to do my like first freshman short film, I did a short film that had a script that I did full like kind of storyboards for, and like thought out a whole 10-minute narrative that had multiple characters, and it like and like looking back, I'm like, it's hard to watch it now, but it's like, I'm like, wow, it's like I gathered a whole cast of people, and the crew was still mostly just me. Like I was still like doing double duty of like acting in it, and then setting up the camera, and handling all the aspects mostly just by myself, but just like having a little bit of help and doing something like that was like definitely another step up of. And like throughout college, it was like I slowly went from doing that, where it was still basically one of the films I did in high school, but a couple other people were helping me now, was like by the middle of college, then I switched to being like, after freshman year, I stopped doing stuff uh, where I was acting in them. And I finally like got to just be behind the camera, and and while I was directing, like be able to watch the shot, which was like a huge step up. And like people I met working on the my freshman year project, like then we made a short film the next semester on our own that was like at like my close friend Aiden, who I met in my freshman year like media arts film class, like we've now become like close collaborators over school, and now we still like work on each other's films. Uh,
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, that kind of working relationship, that collaboration, I think can really lead to a lot of, bigger ideas and when you have somebody you can work with like that, that's good to hear. I'm curious, when you were making these films, were you able to screen them outside of the film school at all? I mean, were there like any local festivals that you were able to play them at, or other, like film
um,
nights or anything like that?
I'm trying to think like in college if I ever got the chance to like uh I guess like the um because I went to film school at Temple, and Temple does have like student film festivals throughout the years, and like I did get the chance to like get my films to play at a couple of the like through school festivals, which was awesome to kind of get a serious audience, I guess. And it was like the like I'm trying to think if I did like get a chance to really show things, because I feel like that's like something that hasn't really happened till after school. I think like something that kind of got in the way of that is like right because I started college in 2019, and then 2020 happened, and then like over COVID it like messed up a lot of like the kind of film school experience, I guess, because by it was like we got one semester where we got to work together and use all the equipment and all that. I mean, as a freshman, they don't really let you use much. You just get to use like a little camcorder. That was basically the same as what I had in high school. But, then all of a sudden we got kind of cut off, and a lot of the in-person production classes, which is what I really wanted to do. Like I wanted to go on set. I wanted to do work on bigger crews and like learn what that was like. But it was like a lot of that got like really limited over COVID. And I was like wondering, like I was debating if it would be better or not to like pause school and wait till it reopens. But I was kind of already attached to like the little community that was in my year, and and I kind of thought like, oh, if I like quit now, the like I might kind of lose some of these like the little bit of momentum that I had. So I just kind of like doing film school sometimes over like 2020 and 2021 like kind of felt silly to do, because it was like I did a videography class over Zoom, where it's supposed to be a class where you're in a camera studio and like setting up lights and and then I'm just like it's one thing to have someone over Zoom tell you about camera lenses and focal lengths, and it's another thing to be able to use the camera yourself and like actually go out and make something. And it was like the and for a while I definitely kind of think it like limited what I could do uh for a while before and finally by the end of school, like things were still open, or things started to open up again. And it was like, but it's funny that the kids in my year kind of still think that like, oh, we were sort of truncated, I guess, with like what we wanted out of like our film school experience, or
Yeah, I
something.
was wondering if you found that shaped how you approach production. I mean, were you kind of forced to work under those limitations? Do you think it's kind of, formed a way of working that you are continuing to take with you, kind of thinking
Oh,
about working in those limited circumstances?
that's interesting. No, I think, I mean, maybe this would go for any type of production these days, but like maybe it made me used to uh doing like extended pre-production like over just doing calls like this like was something I was not used to before then, but now I do calls like this all the time for like various like film projects. Um and also like something that I think maybe that it was part of influencing me is that uh there was one film that I did over like maybe 2021 that I did with my friend Aiden that I mentioned that was like we did this one horror comedy like slasher type short film called Killjoy that like to us is still like our peak of filmmaking, even though it's not great, I'd say, but it's very funny to us. Like, you know, like we were like, this is uh just because it was the right kind of it ended up because the crew basically just turned into me and him over and we had to have a very limited crew uh and like the and it ended up just being kind of a very small scale thing, and I think that's sort of turned into my favorite way to make film projects is because like since I've helped out on many sets and I've been parts of lots of films that are much bigger productions and have 20, 30, however large crew size, but I still prefer the like less than 10 people being the crew because like the and a lot of times like we almost have to fight for that now because a lot of people would say like when me and Aiden would talk about how we want to shoot something, like we like just like shooting quick, like street shooting. We being very kind of scrappy and DIY, which is I guess how I've always done things. The what am I saying here? Like the a lot of times when we're working on films now, the other people don't understand how we expect to shoot a whole short film in 5 days or something, but we're just like that's what we're used to and like that's what we prefer. Like, because it's almost like a big crew can bog you down in a way, like having to like I just feel like having a crew now that I've experienced that is great. And it's amazing to be able to just focus on one job on set. But the doing like the kind of small scale run and gun filmmaking style has kind of like become the way that like I want to work whenever I can, I guess.
Sure, it definitely
But
teaches you how to be kind of efficient and resourceful in making a movie, getting a lot out of a small budget or small resources. Um, I'm curious with Midnight Flowers, was that made in your, like final year of film school, or did that come immediately afterward?
yeah, Midnight Flowers was great because that was my senior thesis project through school. And that was kind of like the biggest scope thing I had done up to that point because um, it was done through, they have a program there where you can concentrate on one aspect of filmmaking, and then it makes your junior and senior years kind of focused around like the entire point of the school year being to make a thesis project. The thesis projects were like 15-minute-ish narrative short films. And like looking back on it now, sometimes I'm like wondering if it was the right move or not to do the concentration program because the it makes you just focus on like I chose to focus on directing, which is like where you get to direct a short like a 15-minute short. But part of me almost wonders that if I stayed just kind of a general film major, I could have done like learned more about lighting or sound than I know now, because like I just kind of hyper focused on just making this one short film. The but I am glad that I made Midnight Flowers because it was such a step up from me compared to any little short that I did before because it got to be like uh you know throughout film school kind of learning how to make a short film, uh, and also learning how to direct actors. And then when it came to Midnight Flowers, it was like I got to do a whole narrative 15-minute short where I got to, my love of like cool locations and I got to mix in my love of puppets and like animation type things into doing like a comedic drama. I get, I don't really know how to define define. It's just like I got. I'd always describe Midnight Flowers. It's like the first time that I feel like I got to make a film that was the type of film I always imagined making. I guess like I feel like all other things I made before that were just kind of like steps to learning the things to finally like make a film like yes, like this is where I want to go. Like this is the kind of like work I want to do, I
That's
guess.
where it all came together. That's good to hear. Did you find the production of it? Were there any particular, experiences or behind the scenes stories, anything like that that really stand out to you when you look back on it? Anything you really learned from specifically in the making of that film?
Hmm. The no, it's you always like every movie you always like learn something and it was the um like I guess with that one like well what was the struggle for me for a while was I knew I was doing a thesis film and it's something that they tell you about and that I was like very immersed in because at the film program at school uh every year all the kids who are doing their thesis projects all shoot and you always hear it was like a looming thing that was like coming closer. It was like because it's like I throughout my time at school I was the crew on many thesis projects for other people's films uh and it, like every time you'd see someone else's thesis project it'd be like oh but like when I get the chance to do mine like this is how I'm going to do it like the uh but then when like the time came where it was the how my schedule worked was it was like junior year ended and then they're like over the summer they're like or no in the uh spring semester of junior year they're like write a script in the screenwriting class and then next year that's going to be the film that's going to be your thesis project was how they did it but the I ended up like working on a script like I just kind of did some pre-production work for a script that a friend of mine was doing and I like worked with him to do it because I just needed to work on something but I had a kind of crisis in the summer in between junior year and senior year because right when senior year starts you're supposed to start pre-production of your thesis film but I'm like I don't think this idea is right for me to do like I feel like I didn't believe in it like it was going to be something that I like wanted to direct or like could do right. And I just like realized that like I want to do something else. But then I had a couple months to like formulate an idea the for like what I wanted my thesis to be, but like nothing I feel like I thought of was like up to the standard of what I wanted it to be. And I had no, and I was like so worried. And I remember it got to the point where I've never actually explained this to anyone, but the there was a Zoom that we did where we met the professor that would be our professor throughout senior year that would like guide us in making our thesis films. And I was meeting him for the first time over Zoom, like it was kind of like a check-in, like how are you guys doing with like the pre-production of your thesis films? And I when we and I met him and I still was like not committed to to like my script that we were supposed to have already had done. Like the and I was like not committed to an idea that moment. And then it was like that week, I was so in like crisis mode. I'm like, God, like, I can't write anything. I'm terrible. Like, I'll never figure something. Like, I was like contemplating, like, I'm gonna have to like drop out of this like thesis program. I'm like, I just like don't have something. And I was very, very close, even when I was like in my senior year. Like, I was like, I just can't get this together. The and it was like just a random conversation that ended up spurring the idea that became Midnight Flowers like that like a day before maybe I like had to commit to an idea but and it was like actually similar to the mall one it came from the location which is always a very inspiring thing for me but it was like um I was with a friend and someone's dad was talking about the a flower shop that was in both of our neighborhoods growing up, and it's a flower shop that I'd driven past many times, and I thought it was like a cool old building. And I forget how it even came up, but he was like, "Oh yeah, do you know that that flower shop used to be open 24 hours when I was younger?" And I was like, and I was just like, "What are you talking about?" Like, and then we were just joking about this flower shop being like, what could you possibly like, just like the idea of a business like that existing, like what could you possibly need flowers for at midnight that couldn't wait till the next morning? And the it was just like an idea I got caught, and like probably what it was in real life is like maybe it was like, like they were like it was like a cover, and they were like that's like the joke that everyone says, like, oh, they were probably like selling weed or something at the flower shop. The like I don't know, but then it got my mind going about like, you know, what kind of people would go to a 24-hour flower shop? Like, what would that scene look like? Um, and because I was like, you know, someone must have, like, they'd have to have a story to tell if you're going to a flower shop in the middle of the night. Like, what reason could that possibly be? Um, and then I kind of thought of the idea of like a couple that like had an argument, and then someone goes to get like apology flowers at the middle of the night to like go get roses to like bring them to their partner to apologize. And I think like the idea of like, oh, they messed up so bad that they have to go get flowers now at like this time of night. And like that idea stuck with me. And then like that night, I was sitting up at night before I knew I was gonna like have to talk about what my thesis is like how my thesis is going the next day. And then I'm like, oh my God, this could actually be a story. And then just from there, like from that location and that idea, I like came up with an idea about like, it made me think of a whole world that could be like uh the at a midnight, like a 24-hour flower shop, uh and I think the idea of like a romantic relationship gone wrong kind of led to this like melancholy tone that I wanted for it. Like, even though I still wanted it to be humorous and thought of it as like I wanted it to almost be like a noir type of environment. Like it's always raining outside, and it's always kind of like everyone is going through their own, story. And it kind of led me to this like vignette idea where I'm like, I wanted to come up with multiple stories of different people that would pass through the flower shop in the middle of the night, I guess. I think,
That's really interesting to hear how that came together. That is an intriguing idea, the 24-hour flower shop. You definitely have to wonder, what
yeah, like what was that like?
stories, yeah,
And I
what
don't even
stories
know if
would come
it's
out of that.
true. I don't even know if it actually was open 24 hours. It's
Yeah.
just like I'm very curious about it still to this day. I don't
Right.
know.
Well, either way, it sounds like it inspired a lot of ideas for you. With the film finished, did you have a chance to show it? I know I saw it at the Philovision Festival. Did you have a chance to show it at other festivals, or was there like a final year screening at the film school?
Yeah, the in the thesis class, it's like the first half of the year is pre-production and shooting it in theory, and then all the second semester is just post. But something always goes wrong and you don't get to shoot till later, so that everyone ends up shooting in first people are shooting in January and then February, and then we are getting really close because there is like a showcase uh that was in April, and then it was like the looming like deadline of everyone's projects, like and people are reshooting, like, getting reshoots and things to fix everything like the week before, it felt like. But the it was the when it did finally like come together, it was great to get to screen it at the like showcase of all the other thesis projects, because it's like you got throughout the class I got to see like the evolution of all the scripts, and then through all the different cuts before we got to like the final cut of everyone's project. And it was such a great, like, probably still my like favorite screening that I've ever gotten to play at one of my things because it was like so many people, we all like worked together to like get everyone's films done. Like everyone gave ideas on everyone's films, and it was awesome to um, find out through that screening that a lot of people knew the location where I ended up shooting the flower shop where I shot the film at Penny's Flowers, which is in this little like square Keswick village in which is like 15 minutes away from me. It's not the flower shop that was supposedly open 24 hours. That was like another one around the corner from my house. But the um at the screening, lots of people were like, "Oh my God, like like I grew up right around the corner from there." And like lots of people had, because it's a very old building and like the business is from the 30s or 40s, and it's like always the building hasn't changed for years, and like it was cool to see that a lot of people had connection to the area and immediately like recognized it with the movie, which was like an effect that I wasn't expecting. But like the um and it was also just like great getting people's reactions from like the surprise of when a puppet shows up, like in the final section of the movie, or like like I sometimes I feel like when I get like the rare opportunity to get some screening like that, I'm like sitting here like this, like all excited for to hear everyone's like reactions to it. But and it was just like a very sweet like it was rewarding, I guess, that experience, like getting to show it.
I'm
And
glad to
and
hear it.
afterwards, I have gotten to play at a couple other small Philly festivals, and I still hope to get it to more festivals. But I got to um, a year or two after I graduated, it got to kind of premiere outside of being the worked on version in school. It got to play at the Philadelphia Independent Film Festival,
Oh,
which
nice.
was also a really cool experience. And that was probably like the most real festival that I got to be a part of up to that point. That was like it wasn't just for college students. It was like, a an adult film festival. Um, but anyway,
Well,
yeah.
with Midnight Flowers out now, do you have and just before we wrap up, do you have any other projects in the works that you can tell us about?
Hmm. The I guess I'm trying to think what I would say. Too many things. I'm like, because now I went from being mad at myself for not working on one project to now it's like 100 pre-production things that I'm not getting to for various projects. Lots of things. But there's a short film that I made with my close friend Aiden that I was a part of. It was something that he wrote and directed, but we have a short film called Mom Jolie that is a family drama that is about a mother that is reconnecting with her son that she hasn't seen in years. The and it was a very different type of film to make for me because I'm used to doing kind of humorous genre inspired kind of lighter things and not like and it was a test for us to make something that was like we're gonna do a play it straight like human drama, which of course I love but not something that I'm used to making, and it was kind of like a different step for us, and it's played at a couple different places, but we hope to have it play at more festivals soon. The I'm trying to think of, and also uh, with my, I've after school, I've kind of found places for me to do my stop motion and like and puppet things, which people have seen that I've done work like that through some of my projects in school, and it's kind of given me the opportunity to do puppet work and animation work for other people's projects. Um, and the big thing that I'm working on right now is I'm working with a friend of mine, Steven, who runs this uh, art installation gallery space called the Yamatorium, which is this like West Philly. Um, kind of a art experience the by my friend Steven, who's like a multimedia artist and he's done music and animation. Uh, but the I met up with him just like by chance of like I got his place recommended on Instagram and then I just came in and checked it out one day and I told him that I'm a filmmaker and I loved what he was doing and we've kind of partnered with making we're working towards like kind of turning his work into a show like some kind of mixed media animation variety show type thing that kind of that we've been like working together to develop. And there's a Instagram where we've been like posting short animations now, the Yamatorium on Instagram.
That sounds like a
The,
cool idea. Before we sign off, my last question for you is if you could tell everyone where they can find your work, any websites or online portfolios or anything that you'd like to point anyone to. We can also include these links in the description of the video.
Yeah. I guess the main place to find my work is my Instagram, which is Noco is Loco. Ever since I was a kid, I always signed my movies with Noco, which is just Noah Cohen. And it's like some nickname that a family friend like gave me when I was a little kid, and I've just always put it. And now I'm like, I can't stop now because I put it on shorts for 10 years now. And I'd like, I don't know, but so I don't know if I'm gonna keep using that name forever, but the Noco is Loco on Instagram, and I put like updates to all my movie stuff on there. And I also have a YouTube channel that's uh, either Noco or Noco Productions, or which I haven't updated in a while, but I'm sure I'll put stuff on there eventually too.
Great. Well, Noah, thanks again for speaking with me on here today. It was great catching up with you. And like I said, we had some nice conversations at the Philovision Festival. And of course, that next one is happening on February 20th. I believe it's Thursday. Are you showing anything there this year? I mean, this
The
time around?
I'm not sure if I'm 100% gonna get to play something, but hopefully I'll get to play one of the animation projects that I've been doing with my friend Steven that I mentioned recently. I've been like uh working on cutting together some animation stuff that could hopefully play. But if not then maybe like the next one.
Yeah.
The But I'm excited for Philovision, the because it was a great mix of like weird, cool art stuff that I'm into, and I'm excited for it.
Great. Well, I hope it goes well. And yeah, I mean, thanks again. It was a great conversation. Enjoyed hearing about how you got into filmmaking and all of your work. And best of luck on future projects.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. It's great.